Hello, welcome to Europe Now, this time from two Central European countries with closely entwined histories and which are both currently cause for some concern in Brussels and beyond. We are in Hungary and in Slovakia. Both countries joined the European Union in 2004 and in 2007 the Schengen visa-free travel zone. Just over a decade later, both Hungary and Slovakia are under some scrutiny over their refusal to take in migrants under a European quota system, over corruption and governance. Well, we begin our programme in Budapest. It's a city that traces its history back to Roman times, but where today thousands of demonstrators are comparing their current Prime Minister, if not to a Roman emperor, then for some, to a dictator. In April, Viktor Orban was re-elected for a third time, bringing thousands of demonstrators to the streets and sparking fears for many of a slide towards authoritarianism.
A decisive victory for Viktor Orban in Hungary's parliamentary election. This after a campaign dominated by hardline anti-immigration rhetoric. Fidesz and the allied Christian Democratic People's Party maintained control of the parliament, picking up 133 of 199 seats. The far-right Jobbik party came in second with 26 seats. Looking at the popular vote, Fidesz won 2.8 million votes, just under half of the overall tally. His key campaign themes: traditional values and hostility to immigration.
The biggest danger of all is the millions of immigrants who are threatening us from the south. And Europe's leaders, in league with a billionaire speculator, do not want to defend the borders, but rather they want to let the immigrants in.
The Prime Minister's victory further fragmented Hungary's opposition. Shortly after, both the heads of the Socialist Party and the far-right Jobbik party stepped down.
Zoltan Kovacs, Hungarian government spokesman, thank you very much for receiving us. First question, the election in April of Viktor Orban and the Fidesz party gave the party a two-thirds majority in parliament, a supermajority that would permit it to change the constitution. Where does your government want to take Hungary? What's the vision?
Keep in mind that we have started with refurbishing the Hungarian economy, which was at the brink of economic collapse, close to the situation you still see, say, in Greece. And if you take a look at the macroeconomic numbers, they are going to tell you a clear message and picture about our achievements and the directions we have. With fiscal discipline at hand, we also go for refurbishing the Hungarian economy in every respect, including small and middle-sized enterprises. And we also have started to refurbish those systems, actually, which help the Hungarians live their everyday lives.
During the campaign, there was a lot of talk about immigration, migrants, Muslims, Hungary's culture and identity. That's not what you mentioned just now.
No, because if you wanted to have a clear picture about our intentions, we always have to start with the country. And we've done a lot for the past 8 years in that respect. But we have always focused and kept the focus on the most important, the hottest political issues, posing the biggest challenge for Hungarians. Indeed, illegal migration-related issues are in the focus of our political attention, and are going to remain on the political agenda, we're afraid, for a longer period of time.
We know that with the migration crisis, huge numbers of people did come onto Hungarian territory. Hungary now refusing to take part in the so-called quota system around the EU. There is talk that Hungary's voting rights in the European Union could be suspended. That would be a significant step that's never happened before. Is Hungary prepared to rethink its policy on migrants in some way?
But that's a political witch hunt you see in the western part of Europe and among those politicians in the European Parliament who are preparing a report on Hungary. And keep in mind that we are not partners in any kind of political witch hunt. It's nobody's business to have a political opinion on Hungary but the Hungarians.
You've said that the migration crisis is going to continue for several years. In that case, nobody can really turn a blind eye to it. What do you think would be a solution?
Our philosophy is that you have to stop illegal migration at the borders of the European Union. It's not a matter of capability, it's a matter of decision, willingness. And then we have already suggested back in 2015 in September that you have to establish the capability of the European Union beyond the borders of Europe to help those who are in need, You have to go to the spot instead of bringing them to Europe.
And Hungary is prepared to do that?
Yeah, we are participating beyond our share economically and size in those efforts. As you recall, the Visegrad 4 have offered over 30 million euros actually to handle the situation in Africa. And we are also on the ground in the Near East, helping Christian communities and those who would like to stay in their birthplace in face of those thousands, or rather hundreds of thousands and millions, who leave and want to come to the European Union illegally.
They say that disagreement is healthy in any relationship. However, does Hungary want to remain a member of the European Union?
We want to believe and we want to stay with Europe, and that's why we are outspoken and frank. We truly believe that in order to make good decisions, to have a proper decision-making procedure, you have to be very honest and outspoken if it's about reality on the ground.
And you accept Europe being honest and outspoken in return?
Indeed, but keep in mind that the so-called politically correct language in which Europe is working for the past couple of decades have put a shade on the capability to address issues properly and honestly.
Zoltan Kovacs, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, as Viktor Orban and his government get to work for their new term, accusations of corruption are also swirling. One mayor who spoke to our correspondent claimed that the government is cracking down on civil liberties in an attempt to divert attention away from malpractice, in some cases carried out by members of Viktor Orban's own family. Check out this report from Gulliver Crag.
These street lamps are brand new, paid for by the European Union. But with their dim light, you wouldn't know it.
It's 7.4 lux, right under the lamp. Below 6 lux, the human eye can't even see colours.
The dingy street lighting has been installed in some 30 municipalities, led by the Fidesz party.
Elios did the lighting. It's a company co-owned by the Prime Minister's son-in-law, Ozor Tiborst. It seems to me that they've got the lamps on low, to make them last longer and cut costs.
The European Anti-Fraud Office accuses Elios of winning street lighting contracts illegally and wants the firm to return more than 43 million euros. It's just one of a string of schemes through which companies are accused of cheating the system to bag EU money.
This municipal building was recently restored at a cost of 2.3 million euros. For a project of that size, by law, there should be a public tender, but they cut the work into 5 smaller parts that were under the threshold and just gave the job to their guy. Today in the City Council, we saw proof of this, so we could sue.
The EU Anti-Fraud Office is investigating 41 cases involving European money. Transparency International says Hungary was the most corrupt country in the EU in 2017. But last February, the city opted for change, voting in an independent candidate.
As a result of corruption, politicians now don't want freedom of the press, because then people will find out about corruption. They don't want state of the law, because then they would go to jail. So all of a sudden, all the other civil liberties are decreased, suppressed.
Moving into the town hall, the new mayor found a huge pile of suspicious contracts. He recruited a famous whistleblower to go through them.
What's even more worrying is that the man who ran this town for all those years now has a key role in the ministry responsible for allocating EU funds.
The man in question is János Lázár. Viktor Orban's chief of staff for 4 years, he's now the local MP. But as the graft allegations pile up, his party prefers to talk about other issues. And one in particular, immigration.
We've come now to Hungary's very historic parliament buildings. I'm here to meet MEP Benedek Javor, who's with the National Party Dialogue for Hungary. Hello.
Hello. Nice
and you're
to
with
meet
the Greens group in the European Parliament. Well, we're talking about the recent election here in Hungary. What do you expect from the next 4 years under Viktor Orban?
With this two-thirds majority, I believe that they will start to occupy the last still standing opposition or independent institutions of democracy in Hungary. Namely, I'm sure that they will start to increase the pressure on the judiciary system and the independent courts. Also, I expect raising the pressure on independent media, which is already works in very difficult circumstances, and there is very few still functioning independent quality media outlets. Also the campaign against NGOs. The first thing to be done is to adopt in the parliament the new Stop Soros bill, which is an anti-NGO bill. And perhaps the last action from the government could be to completely redesign the local government system of Hungary to centralize very much the public administration system in the country.
Well, the government spokesman told us that Viktor Orban has been elected by the public. He got an overwhelming majority. What do you say to that?
Of course, the government was able to convince the public with its anti-migrant and anti-refugee propaganda that Hungary is in a final danger. If the government is not able to continue, then migrants are going to occupy and invade Hungary. But all with that, they needed those distorted circumstances, systems, including the media and the electoral law, which helped them to win the elections, but this does not mean that the majority of the society is behind them.
Well, thanks so much, Benedek Javor. Do stay with us. So we're just going to watch a report right now. During the campaign, Viktor Orban accused the American-Hungarian billionaire philanthropist George Soros of meddling in Hungary's affairs. What's behind these claims and how much truth is there to them? Our reporters have been finding out.
A musical workshop for disadvantaged kids in the town of Pécs. These after-school classes are run by a local NGO. The funds come from private donors, stepping in where the state's financing falls short. It's part of a network of NGOs run by András Nirati. Last year, they received $500,000 from the George Soros Foundation. In response, the Fidesz-controlled town council advised citizens to avoid contact with them, and they lost their office space. Pressure like that increasingly common against Hungary's civil society.
The state want to control the funds for the NGOs, because then with the funds, they will control civic society. They want to destroy the last seeds of independence in this field.
George Soros has become a target and a bogeyman for the government. Viktor Orban accusing him of importing migrants into the country, campaigning with a promise that a Stop Soros law will be a priority. Soros's Open Society Foundation was set up in the 80s to promote democracy post-communism. It donates $4 million each year to Hungarian NGOs. But faced with mounting pressure from the state, it's decided to transfer operations to Berlin.
We have closed offices in the past, in Russia, Vladimir Putin's Russia, and in Uzbekistan, countries that are known for their hostility regarding human rights. The fact that we have to close an organization that defends human rights in an EU member state, well, it's a very strong signal that's being sent to the leaders of the European Union.
Controlling the media is another key to Viktor Orban's success. The Magyar Nemzet newspaper used to be a staunch conservative ally until its owner, Lajos Simicska, changed the editorial line 3 years ago, publishing a series of scoops about government corruption. Days after the election, he announced the paper would close. 100 journalists lost their jobs. Many can't find new ones.
A lot of people lost the job and they are on a blacklist. They cannot work in different places. So it's maybe not understanding in Western Europe what does it mean that the government said that journalists are on the blacklist and it's not possible to employ them. So it's quite hard. And
Magyar Nemzet closed after 80 years. Now a team of the old staff are launching a new paper, Magyar Hang, the Hungarian voice, to continue their independent line.
We didn't believe in the past that in 2018 we have to speak about the basic democratic questions. But now I have to say that it's more hard today, because we have to fight to survive as an independent journalist.
Printers in Hungary refuse to produce the newspaper, so Hungarian Voice is being printed in Slovakia. The new paper's staff won't be paid at first, and it will only run to 10,000 copies. Its struggle, a sign of the success Viktor Orban is having in silencing critical voices in Hungary.
Well, Benedek Javor, you've brought us now to Liberty Square in central Budapest, one of the emblematic scenes of protest during the 1956 Hungarian uprising, as I understand it.
Yes, it was.
I wanted to talk a bit more about media freedom. You've actually taken part in a fact-finding mission in Slovakia recently, investigating the murder of an investigative journalist there, Jan Kuciak, who'd been looking into corruption claims. Now, in terms of media freedom in Slovakia, in this region, how big an issue is it?
6 months ago, we had the Daphne Caruana Galizia murder in Malta, which points out that investigative journalism has become a dangerous job in the EU. We learned a lot of lessons from the Slovakia visit, partly regarding media freedom issues. In Slovakia, the situation of media freedom is much better than in Hungary, for example. Still, there are serious concerns regarding the safety of journalists and also the independence of some media outlets, and also corruption in the member states of the region is far beyond a level where you can say that, okay, corruption exists, this is sad, but we cannot do anything about this. This is a byproduct of, for example, the European money transfer, cohesion policy, and so on and so forth. Now it's becoming systemic. It distorts our democracy, it distorts our economy and markets, and it distorts our society, and this makes the life of investigative journalists extremely dangerous. So I believe that here we have to be absolutely clear that the European institutions are ready to become much more active in the protection of media freedom in the member states, as well as to create a much more effective control over the spending of the EU funds.
A call for action then from you. Thank you very much for your time, Benedek Javor, MEP.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be looking at Slovakia in much more detail in part 2 of our programme. That's where we're heading next. Do stay with us here on Europe Now.